This is another lecture in our series on how to model things in SolidWorks, or more generally in CAD systems. Again, as I like to say, it doesn't really matter that we're in SolidWorks. A lot of these principles apply across CAD platforms, no matter what we're in. So in our first video, we talked about sketching generally and some of the constraints that are available to us. And this time, I would like to talk about construction geometry. So I've got a blank part here in SolidWorks, and on the front plane again, because I'm going to assume that I want this particular part to be 3D printed, I'm just going to go ahead and create a sketch. And again, if I select the front plane over here in the feature manager, and I hit the sketch key up here in the upper left-hand corner of my ribbon, I get a new sketch. And for now, I'm just going to drop a big circle right here at the origin. So the circle is up here on our second area on the ribbon under our sketch tools. And if I highlight, I can see an orange dot here at the origin. That means that if I drop the point there, you can see next to my cursor the little yellow coincident constraint marker. I can click and it will automatically add a coincident constraint for the center of that circle. And if I just move my mouse, I'm not holding down the left mouse button. I just click the once to get my point. And if I drag it out, I can create my circle. If I hit escape to get rid of the selection, right? I now have a big blue area, which we haven't seen yet in our previous video, and I also have a circle. So notice that the circle is blue, and blue means, again, that it's under constraint. And if I select it and look over in my properties tab over on the left, I can see that it's underdefined. I haven't defined that diameter, right? I can grab and drag now my size, but I do have a coincident constraint. So if I click and drag that center point, I can't move it around because it is told to be locked, constrained to the origin. So I'm going to give this thing a diameter by clicking on Smart Dimension, selecting my circle. And so right now, by default, the way I dragged it and just sort of placed it in there, I have a 7.72-inch diameter circle. Let's make that 5 just for the sake of demonstration. Now it turns black, and if I drag my circle, click and drag, I can't move it anymore. I'm fully defined. I've created a circle. I've given it a center point and told that center point to be coincident with my origin. So the center point can't move. And I've defined a diameter now, and those are the only two things that are necessary to define a circle, a diameter and a center point. Once those are both locked down with constraints, we have a fully constrained circle. So construction geometry is different from normal geometry that we would normally draw. Any geometry like this circle on the screen, if I move over here, and we haven't talked about features yet, but if I move over here and click on features and I tell it that I want to extrude that feature, and I'm just going to leave it the thickness that it is, I will get the circle, right? This is just a circle extruded. I think the default there was 0.1 inches. So I now have a circle 0.1 inches thick. If I go over here and now edit my sketch, we will talk about features later in separate videos. But if I edit my sketch, I'm back to where I started, right? I've got the highlighted sketch now, the enclosed area here. I've still got a fully constrained circle. It's black. I can't move it. If I change that dimension again, let's get out of here. If I double click this dimension, the 5 inches, I can change it, right? I can make it 6. I can make it 4. I can double click and just change it to the diameter that I need. So the circle is a black line, and if I drew that, that is the part that I got, right? If I then say draw another circle, so up here on the ribbon, I'm selecting circle again, and I'm just going to put this one randomly for the sake of demonstration. Right? It is fully under constrained. The center's not locked to anything. I can drag that center point around anywhere I want it. I can make the diameter bigger or smaller just by dragging. I'm not constrained, but I have another enclosed area. So if I now accept this sketch, I get a hole. What if I don't want a hole? I mean, the reason that I'm going to go back over here on my feature tree and edit this sketch again. I can do that two ways. I can right click and open this window, or I can just click on it once and I get a simpler tab, right? And the edit sketch button is the first option here. So if I edit that sketch, the reason that that happens is because these are both enclosed contours. So a contour is any sketch that we draw according to SolidWorks. An enclosed contour is when we see the blue highlighting. So I have an enclosed contour here with my main circle, and I have a second enclosed contour here. And by default, the way that I've drawn this, the order that I've drawn it, when I accept this sketch, that assumes that my second one I want cut out of the first enclosed contour. If I don't want that to happen, if I want a circle that I can reference for other things, I can click that circle, select it, and click the For Construction option over here on the left in the Properties tab. So if I click For Construction and then deselect my circle so we can see, I'll zoom in a touch. We can now see that this circle is dotted. It is still blue. I still haven't defined it, right? It is under constrained. But notice it's no longer highlighted with the blue highlighting because it's not an enclosed contour. If I accept this sketch now, it doesn't show up at all on the final part. The reason for that is I've made it construction geometry. So construction geometry is any geometry that I want to use as a reference. I maybe want a dimension from it, but I don't want it to actually show up in my part. One of the most common, or one of the even the, we'll say, easiest things to demonstrate construction geometry would be in a bolt circle. For instance, let's say that my big 5-inch circle is some sort of flange, and I want a series of holes around it, right? So I'm going to move this to the center. Okay. It is now locked down. I can't drag it, but I can still resize it. I haven't given it a diameter yet. And if I accept, again, the circle doesn't show up at all in my final part. So then I'm going to click over here on the sketch and edit again. Let's give that a dimension to lock that down. And we can call it 3.25. We're close enough anyway, right? Now it's black. It is fully constrained. I have a fully constrained construction circle. Now for a bolt circle, typically we want a diameter and we want a series of angles. So to get my series of angles between holes, I can select my line tool up on the tab, up on the ribbon. I'm going to align it with the center, right? I get that constraint automatically added, and I'm going to make it coincident with either. Now, there are reasons to do either, but I can either make it coincident. Notice my cursor changes. If I drop the point there on the, notice that if I drop my point there on the bolt circle diameter, I'll get a coincident constraint there, or I can make the line coincident out here on the bigger circle. Either one, it doesn't matter. We'll ultimately get the same results. So I'm just going to draw it to the outer circle. And if I hit escape to get off, notice if I don't hit escape, it's going to want to draw another line. It's going to want to stick with the same tool. And I can, if I needed to, just keep clicking, right, and make a shape. I don't want to do that. So when I'll delete all three to run back through that. If I select the line again up here on the ribbon and make it coincident with the center and coincident with the outer circle, I need to hit escape in order to deselect that. Okay. Now, I do not want this line to be a line that shows up in the final model. I want it to be construction again. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to click For Construction. And if I hit escape, then we can see that it turned dotted. That way it won't show up, but I still have the ability to reference dimensions from it. So let's make this a 3-bolt pattern. I'm going to just drop in 2 more lines here. Again, hitting escape between each one. Now I can select multiple things to make construction at the same time by holding Control as I click. So I'm going to click, hold Control, click again. Over here on the left, now I have line 5 and line 6 selected in my selected entities. If I now come down and click For Construction and hit escape, it'll change both at the same time. So it's good for changing multiple entities to construction entities all at once. Now, to define a bolt circle, generally speaking, I need a constraint on one of these lines to lock it in place first. It doesn't do me much good if I say, come up here to Smart Dimension and I select 120 degrees apart. And if I come over here and, well, first let's escape so that you can see the 120 dropped in there, right? So these lines are locked. Now, if I move these, they're locked relative to each other, but they're still blue because there's nothing defining where they actually land. And if I do the same here, a smart dimension from this line to this line, and make it 120 degrees, and hit escape, you can see it dropped to 120, and now all three rotate as I drag a point around. But again, they're blue because even though the diameter is fixed, they can still move. And anytime things can still move in a sketch, they're under constrained, they're under defined. So I want to also select one, and it doesn't matter which one at this point, but select one of these lines. And I want to do one of two things. When I created the circle, I also got several points on the diameter of the circle. And if I were to draw another line, I could show you, you can automatically get a coincident constraint here. At the top, notice the little yellow diamonds around the circle. At the sides, at the bottom. So if I grab this top diamond and draw down to the origin and leave that line, notice I automatically got a vertical constraint because SolidWorks knows the line is vertical. And I got a coincident constraint to the top point on this circle. Every circle in SolidWorks has those 4 points that we can use around the outside. That line is now fully constrained. If I delete it, I can do the same thing by selecting one of my construction lines and giving it a vertical constraint. So now I've given this line a vertical constraint. We can see it here in the green box next to the line. And now all my lines are black because I have forced this one to be vertical, and these two are 120 degrees away from it. So none of them can move now. If I grab and try to drag these points, nothing is going to move. So these are now fully defined. What about the bolt holes, right? So the point of a bolt circle would be to actually create bolt holes. To do that, I can just grab a circle. And I notice I already get that automatic diamond point, which is a good start since I know I want the first one to be vertical, right? I want these holes to end up at the coincident point where this line meets this bolt pattern circle. And then notice it's blue because I haven't defined diameter. I've defined the center point. So let's give it a diameter, something a little smaller than that. Let's try 0.75. That looks okay for our made up bolt circle, right? So I'm going to grab another circle, and I'm not going to put it here. I'm going to just put it randomly. And I'm also going to do it with a third one because I can show you the same thing with both. So some of the constraint options, we talked about constraint options and how with an arc, we have a tangency option. We have a few other options for constraints as well. With the circles, we also have some options. So I'm going to select the center point of this circle. I'm going to hold control and select both lines. And when I do that, I now have the option for an intersection. So if I click that, SolidWorks will automatically move that circle to the intersection of the bolt circle and this angle line. Now my dot in the middle of this circle is black. It's fixed, and there's an intersection constraint symbol here telling me that it's constrained. I'm going to do the same thing for this circle. Select the center point, hold control, select the bolt circle and the line, and come over here and click intersection. Now, those two are locked in, but I haven't defined their diameters yet. I can click and drag and make them bigger. But generally speaking, I want all three of those holes to be the same size. And I can do that with another constraint type without defining diameters. So if I select the original circle and control click and select the other two, I have all kinds of options down here, right? Now, if you look over on the left side, I've got co-radial, concentric, and the one I want in this case is equal. So if I click equal, notice that those other two shrunk. You can see where they were. The yellow outline is where they were. and the new blue highlight is their new size. So if I hit the check mark up here to accept that, they're all fully constrained now. They are all now, these two have an equal constraint, the blue, and they are equal to the first circle. So no matter what I do now, if I make this a 1-inch circle, the other two adjust to meet that size. If I shrink it, let's shrink it way down to make it obvious. If I shrink it down, they adjust to meet that size. So that is how I can constrain multiple objects, in this case circles, to have the same size, but I only have to change one dimension. If I make it 3/4 of an inch, we go back up. And then if I accept this sketch, again, because the lines and the bolt circle itself were construction geometry, I don't get those. But I did not make my other circles construction geometry. I go back into the sketch. Those are solid lines, so those will actually show up in the final model. So let's take a second and talk about some of those other constraint options that were available there under circles. I'm going to leave this be. I'm going to zoom out and sort of draw next to it. Now, this is not a normal thing to do, but for the sake of demonstration, so I'm going to draw myself 2 more circles over here. And I'm going to control click to select them both, just to demonstrate what some of these other options do for us. So co-radial. Co-radial means, well, let's start with concentric. Concentric is the simpler of the two. Concentric simply means we're going to force the center point of these 2 circles to be coincident. And in fact, I can do the same thing if I select these 2 points, not the 2 circles, but the 2 center points. I get a coincident constraint. And if I click that, they stack on top of each other. So when I move that center point around now, both circles move together because I'm forcing their center points to be coincident. If I give myself 2 more and select the outer circle this time, not the center points, I can get the same effect with over on the left, this concentric constraint. So if I hit concentric, notice it's a different symbol now, but I can do this. It's the same thing. The concentric means that they share a center point. That is different than a co-radial. If I select both of these again, well, let's draw another one. Let's leave those so we can demonstrate the difference. I'm going to draw 2 different circles. They are pretty far apart, right? The center points are not the same. They are way different in size. If I select them both using control click, I also have this co-radial option. Co-radial is going to do 2 things. Co-radial is going to force the center points to be the same, like a coincident or like a concentric, but it is also going to force the diameters to be the same. That's what co-radial means. They will have the same radius and they will have the same center point. So if I click co-radial, notice the yellow is where the smaller circle was. It is now in the big circle. But because they have the same diameter, I no longer can even see 2 different circles because they're co-radial, right? They have the same diameter and the same center point. That is useful later on when we get into adding sketches on top of parts that already exist. Occasionally, we will want to use a co-radial constraint as sort of our definition point for building off of other features of the sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these other circles out here. And I'm actually going to go ahead and delete the main body of my sketch. If I accept, I get an error. I get an error because I've been editing the same sketch, and now I have a part out here that doesn't have any sketch for it, right? The sketch has no contour geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this feature. Under delete, yes. I can also click and just delete with the delete button. Click yes. Now I've got a clean part again, and I'm ready to rock with more demos.